My name is Jacob Smith, and my existence, prior to that watershed Saturday, had unfolded within the predictable, comfortable confines of suburban normalcy. I resided in Cypress Creek, a meticulously planned community where every blade of grass seemed to adhere to a predetermined length. Every house boasted an approved shade from a tightly controlled color palette, and every resident navigated a dense, almost impenetrable web of homeowners association bylaws. I considered myself an eminently reasonable individual, a devoted father to my 9-year-old daughter Ava, and a software engineer by profession. A man who harbored a healthy respect for structured order while simultaneously cherishing a quiet, often unspoken, appreciation for individual autonomy. My personal philosophy leaned heavily towards the principle of live and let live, a preference for avoiding direct confrontation whenever a peaceful alternative presented itself. This pragmatic approach to life, however, was fundamentally challenged and ultimately shattered by the re-entry of Karen Winslow into my carefully constructed world, her presence manifesting with the disruptive force of a meteorological phenomenon. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Karen Winslow occupied a position that she either self-appointed with a messianic fervor or was officially designated to as the formidable head of the Cypress Creek HOA Architectural and Covenant Control Committee. In essence, and stripped of its bureaucratic euphemism, she was the HOA's principal enforcer. She presented as a woman who appeared to derive her very sustenance, her intrinsic sense of purpose, from the meticulous enforcement of rules and regulations. One could almost envision her poring over every comma and semicolon of the HOA's extensive bylaw document, eagerly anticipating the opportunity to wield her power with an unyielding, almost surgical precision, all while maintaining a meticulously constructed veneer of upholding community standards. Her personal crusade, it seemed, was singularly focused on preserving Cypress Creek as an unsullied, pristine suburban utopia, an insulated bubble of unwavering conformity, meticulously purged of any nascent hint of deviation, spontaneity, or, heaven forbid, individualistic human endeavor. She resided a mere 2 streets distant from my own property, yet her watchful gaze possessed an almost supernatural omnipresence, seemingly capable of detecting a subtly misplaced garden gnome or an infinitesimally unapproved shade of beige paint from a geographical remove of several miles. Her influence and power were particularly pronounced and notably tied to the gleaming architectural monument that was the Cypress Creek Clubhouse. This opulent facility, a testament to suburban leisure, encompassed the primary HOA administrative offices, a state-of-the-art fitness center, and, most pertinently to my unfolding narrative, a small, yet surprisingly lucrative, internal café. This particular establishment, affectionately known as the Creek Café, was undeniably Karen's cherished project, a consistent and robust source of revenue for the HOA, an enterprise which she personally oversaw with an almost proprietorial diligence. Ava, my beloved daughter, illuminated my life with an almost incandescent glow. She embodied an infectious optimism that was truly boundless, an unbridled enthusiasm for even the most ostensibly mundane joys, and a remarkably precocious entrepreneurial spirit for a child of 18, merely 9 years. She had dedicated weeks, painstaking weeks, to the meticulous planning of her inaugural foray into the intricate world of commerce, the quintessential lemonade stand. Our conversations leading up to this grand event were extensive and detailed. She had painstakingly sketched elaborate blueprints for her stand, engaged in spirited debates regarding the superior merits of granulated cane sugar versus the more natural alternative of honey, and, with diligent application, designed her own vibrantly cheerful sign, adorned with liberal applications of glitter glue and brightly colored crayons. She had even undertaken rudimentary financial projections, meticulously calculating her anticipated profits, envisioning with vivid clarity the precise quantity of confectionery delights she could procure with her hard-earned earnings. I, in my paternal role, had dutifully supervised the rigorous squeezing of an inordinate number of lemons, the precise volumetric mixing of crystalline sugar and pure water, and the patient chilling of the lemonade pitcher until its exterior glistened with beads of condensation. The palpable anticipation radiating from her young eyes that particular morning was almost a physical entity, a pure, unadulterated excitement that permeated the air and warmed the very core of my being. That particular Saturday, etched indelibly into my memory, dawned with the auspicious promise of a truly perfect day. The sky above was an unbroken, magnificent expanse of brilliant, cerulean blue, the kind of boundless sky that instinctively fosters the belief that any endeavor, however ambitious, is within the realm of possibility. Ava, resplendent in her favored pink t-shirt and practical denim shorts, quite literally vibrated with an almost boundless excitement. We meticulously erected her lemonade stand on our meticulously maintained front lawn, positioning it strategically just by the gentle curve of the curb, a classic unadorned wooden structure painted an immaculate white, proudly displaying her brightly colored, hand-rendered sign which boldly proclaimed, "Ava's Lemonade, fresh delicious, 50 cents." She painstakingly arranged her stack of pristine plastic cups, a gleaming jug of icy, ambrosial lemonade, and a small, vibrantly colored money box, already anticipating its eventual contents. Her youthful face was a veritable tableau of proud determination, her spirit poised, ready to conquer the vast expanse of the world, one sweet, yet tantalizingly tart, sip at a time. Within a mere 15 minutes of our grand opening, her inaugural customer materialized. Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind, elderly neighbor from just a few houses down the street. She purchased a cup with a warm, encouraging smile, her words brimming with genuine praise for Ava's precocious entrepreneurial spirit. Ava's eyes, in response, immediately ignited, glowing with a pure, unadulterated joy that felt as expansive and comforting as unfiltered sunshine. Two more neighbors swiftly followed suit, drawn by the refreshing promise of the beverage and engaging in pleasant, congenial exchanges with my beaming daughter. It was, in every conceivable aspect, the quintessential lemonade stand experience, a veritable slice of classic Americana gracefully unfolding on the pristine canvas of my perfectly manicured suburban lawn. And then, the shadow descended. A sleek obsidian-hued SUV, its polished surface gleaming with an almost ominous iridescence under the benevolent morning sun, glided to an almost imperceptible halt at the very edge of the curb. The driver's side window, with a barely audible mechanical hum, descended smoothly, meticulously revealing the impeccably coiffed head of Karen Winslow. Her customary expression, typically a carefully cultivated mask of polite, almost detached indifference, was now sharpened into an almost predatory look of stern disapproval, her lips pursed tightly into a thin two-cray, unyielding line. Her eyes narrowed with the predatory intensity of a hawk meticulously scrutinizing its unsuspecting prey. "Mr. Smith," she began, her voice crisp, utterly devoid of any warmth, cutting through the otherwise pleasant morning air with the chilling precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "And Ava, a truly lovely day, isn't it?" Her initial greeting was nothing more than a perfunctory, almost ritualistic preamble, a mere flourish before the inevitable, impending verbal assault. I managed to conjure a polite, though instinctively wary, smile in return. "Good morning, Karen. A truly beautiful day for some refreshing lemonade, wouldn't you agree?" Ava's quite enthusiastically engaged in her new venture. Karen's gaze, sharp and unyielding, swiftly shifted from my face to Ava's small, proud countenance, then, with a dismissive, almost disdainful sniff, settled upon the brightly colored sign, and finally, with a lingering, critical focus, on the small, brightly colored money box which, at that precise moment, contained a grand total of $1.50 in humble earnings. Indeed, a very industrious little venture, Ava. However, her voice hardened imperceptibly, shedding any remaining pretense of pleasantness, hardening into an unyielding, authoritative tone. This constitutes unlicensed commercial activity. Chapter 3, Section B, Subsection 7 of the Cypress Creek HOA bylaws explicitly prohibits any form of commercial enterprise, including sales of basher, goods or services, on residential property without prior written approval from the Architectural and Covenant Control Committee, subject to a commercial zoning review and applicable city permits. My jaw instinctively tightened, a subtle clenching of muscle. Karen, with all due respect, it's a lemonade stand. My 9-year-old daughter is merely selling homemade lemonade to her neighbors. It can hardly be construed as a commercial enterprise that threatens the very fabric of Cypress Creek's carefully constructed tranquility. My voice, though I attempted to keep it calm and even, held a discernible tremor of incredulity, a quiet disbelief at the sheer absurdity of the situation. A commercial enterprise, Mr. Smith, is unequivocally a commercial enterprise, regardless of its perceived scale or its apparent innocence, she retorted, her gaze unwavering, her sense of absolute authority radiating palpably. The bylaws are remarkably clear on this matter. Furthermore, I am quite unequivocally certain that Ava does not possess the requisite city business license, nor does this specific residential property possess the appropriate commercial zoning. This activity, therefore, is in direct and undeniable violation of both HOA regulations and established city ordinances. You have precisely 10 minutes to dismantle this entire operation. Failure to comply with this directive will result in a daily fine of $100 until the violation is definitively rectified. And, naturally, a formal complaint will be diligently filed with the city for the egregious offense of operating an unlicensed business. Ava, who had been listening with wide, bewildered eyes, her innocent mind slowly grappling with the profound implications of Karen's harsh words, slowly began to comprehend the devastating meaning of her pronouncements. Her hopeful smile faltered, then irrevocably crumbled, her lower lip beginning to tremble uncontrollably. The bright, effervescent spark of entrepreneurial joy in her young eyes dimmed with chilling speed, replaced by a crushing wave of profound disappointment. She looked up at me, her small face etched with a silent plea, a profound confusion, her nascent dreams dissolving before her very eyes, evaporating into the crisp morning air. But I just wanted to buy candy," she whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with the painful lump of unshed tears. Her dream of sweet treats turning to bitter ashes. Karen Winslow, remaining utterly unmoved, seemingly impervious to the heart-wrenching sight of a heartbroken child, merely offered a tight, almost triumphant smile. "Perhaps, Ava, you should give careful consideration to pursuing a hobby more in line with the community's established recreational guidelines. The Creek Café, for instance, offers a perfectly legitimate and entirely permissible opportunity for residents to purchase refreshments. No permits are required there, naturally." With that final, dismissive pronouncement, she smoothly rolled up her window, her sleek SUV purred imperceptibly to life, and she glided effortlessly away, leaving in her wake a bewildered, seething father, a devastated, weeping daughter, and the lingering, acrid taste of petty bureaucratic tyranny. I stood there, watching her vehicle disappear around the bend in the road, a cold, hard knot of simmering indignation forming deep within my stomach. My initial shock, a transient sensation, swiftly transmuted into a simmering, righteous fury that ignited within me. This wasn't merely about rules or regulations, I realized with chilling clarity. This was about the naked exercise of petty power, about the deliberate crushing of a child's innocent spirit, about Karen Winslow asserting her dominion, particularly over any activity that might, however, infinitesimally pose a threat or present competition to her cherished Creek Café. I looked down at Ava, her small shoulders slumped in utter defeat, her tiny hand clutching the paltry $1.50 as if it were a lost fortune. Her eyes brimming with tears, perfectly mirroring the storm of righteous anger brewing within my own soul. "It's okay, sweetie," I murmured, my voice strained, making a conscious effort to keep the raw anger from seeping into my tone. "We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to make things right." But as I gently helped her slowly, miserably, pack away the plastic cups and the large jug, carefully, almost reverently, folding the glittery, now saddened sign, a silent, steely resolve hardened within me, hardening like tempered steel. I was a man of logic, a meticulous problem solver by profession, and I knew, with an absolute, unwavering certainty, that there had to be a loophole, a hidden avenue within the very rules Karen so fiercely guarded, a legitimate means to fight back against this petty, soul-crushing tyranny, and I would relentlessly pursue it. For Ava, for every crushed childhood dream, for every innocent spirit stifled by arbitrary authority, would fight back, and I would prevail. The lingering sting of Karen Winslow's cutting words, the indelible image of Ava's deflated, crestfallen face, permeated the very air of our usually vibrant home, hanging over us like a baz. Persistent, unwelcome shroud. My initial explosion of fury, a raw, visceral reaction, had gradually subsided, transforming itself into a more concentrated, almost dispassionate determination. As a software engineer, my professional life revolved around the systematic deconstruction of complex problems and the elegant construction of efficient solutions. This predicament, however, transcended the mere algorithmic. It demanded a loophole, a precise point of leverage within Karen's meticulously constructed edifice of rules. She had wielded the HOA bylaws as an oppressive weapon. My unwavering intent was to ingeniously repurpose them, first as an impenetrable shield, and then, if the opportunity presented itself, as a finely honed sword of retribution. I consecrated the remainder of that fateful Saturday afternoon, and indeed, a significant portion of the subsequent Sunday, to an exhaustive immersion in the bewildering, seemingly endless labyrinth of the Cypress Creek HOA bylaws. I executed a full download of the entire document, a dense, mind-numbing tome comprising an overwhelming 200-plus pages of cray, intricately intertwined clauses, convoluted subclauses, and seemingly endless amendments. I consciously disregarded the siren call of the meticulously manicured golf course, dismissed the insistent beckoning of weekend errands, and ignored the enticing allure of leisurely ball pursuits. My laptop, glowing ominously in the semi-darkness of my study, became my personal battleground, and copious amounts of black coffee served as my indispensable fuel. My systematic attack began with a painstaking examination of Chapter 3, Section B. Subsection 7. The very specific clause Karen had so eloquently and devastatingly quoted, the one explicitly prohibiting any form of commercial enterprise without prior written approval, subject to a commercial zoning review and applicable city permits. My eyes meticulously scanned each line, searching for subtle nuances, for unstated exceptions, for any tangential phrase that might hint at a discernible crack, however minute, in her seemingly impenetrable fortress of bureaucratic regulations. And then, with a surge of adrenaline, I discovered it, tucked away, within a less prominent, almost obscure, addendum, specifically designated as Section D, Subsection 3, and bearing the innocuous-sounding title, Home-Based Businesses and Cottage Industries. This particular section, I realized with a growing sense of exhilaration, was demonstrably designed for the explicit purpose of accommodating residents who harbored the ambition of conducting small-scale business ventures directly from their residential premises. The examples cited were varied, encompassing activities such as private tutoring, remote online consulting, or the sale of handcrafted artisanal goods. The pivotal sentence, which immediately illuminated itself in my mind in a triumphant, bold, and almost defiant read with crystal clarity, notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 3, Section B, Subsection 7. A resident may operate a home-based business or cottage industry provided they obtain all necessary municipal licenses and permits, adhere to strict regulations regarding noise, traffic, signage, limited to 1 square foot, non-illuminated, and customer ingress/egress, and do not negatively impact neighborhood aesthetics or quiet enjoyment. A cottage industry. The realization ignited within my mind like a brilliant, audacious spark, illuminating a previously unseen path. A café, not a sprawling, commercially zoned establishment, but a quaint, unassuming, home-based operation, meticulously scaled to serve artisanal coffee, fragrant teas, and, yes, undoubtedly, Ava's incomparable lemonade. The definition of a cottage industry, I immediately recognized, possessed a sufficient breadth and elasticity to encompass such a charming, small-scale endeavor. The most exhilarating aspect of this discovery, the addendum unequivocally stated, with no room for misinterpretation, that prior written approval from the Architectural and Covenant Control Committee is not required for a home-based business or cottage industry once all municipal licenses and permits have been secured. This revelation was a direct, devastating blow to Karen Winslow's perceived omnipotence. Her committee, her personal fiefdom, would possess no legitimate authority once the city had officially granted the requisite permits. A slow, almost wicked grin involuntarily spread across my face. This was it. This was the precise loophole, the Achilles heel in Karen's rigid armor. Karen, in her self-righteous zeal, could not, by her own sacred bylaws, legally impede a legitimately licensed cottage business. And if I were to establish a café, a meticulously licensed café, prominently situated directly on my front lawn, the ultimate irony would be complete. The realization struck me with the force of an epiphany. I would be in direct, undeniable, and perfectly legal competition with her cherished Creek Café at the clubhouse, an institutional establishment she considered her personal domain. My audacious plan began to take coherent form, bold in its conception and defiant in its intent. It would not merely be an ordinary café. It would stand as a direct challenge to Karen's arbitrary authority, a meticulously calculated act of peaceful rebellion cunningly disguised within the legitimate framework of commercial enterprise. My objective was not simply to open a café. It was to meticulously craft a haven, a charming, irresistibly inviting space that would magnetically draw residents away from the sterile, often unwelcoming confines of the Creek Café. My ultimate aim was to effectively and legally siphon off their loyal customer base and, more importantly, inflict a palpable, quantifiable blow to their profits. This endeavor, I realized with growing clarity, transcended the mere vindication of Ava's lemonade stand. It became a profound act of reclaiming a lost sense of genuine community spirit, of overtly challenging arbitrary power, and, yes, I admit, a significant element of deeply satisfying, strategic revenge." End quote. The pivotal first step in this elaborate counteroffensive involved the municipal bureaucracy. I dedicated the ensuing days to navigating the bewildering, often maddening labyrinth of city licensing and permitting requirements. It proved to be an exquisitely tedious process, necessitating the meticulous completion of myriad forms, the scheduling of multiple inspections, the rigorous adherence to intricate health codes, and the diligent compliance with arcane fire safety regulations. I diligently applied for a home-based food service license, meticulously outlining my precise intent to operate a small, outdoor cafe with clearly defined, limited hours of operation. I absorbed every detail of proper food handling protocols, meticulously studied sanitation guidelines, and immersed myself in the complexities of responsible waste disposal. I even undertook the meticulous preparation of my front yard, ensuring its layout and accessibility met every conceivable municipal requirement. To leave absolutely no room for Karen to exploit any technicality, I went so far as to consult with a commercial kitchen supplier, seeking their expert advice on the selection of appropriate, professional-grade equipment for a small-scale culinary operation. I was determined to execute every aspect of this venture with an unwavering commitment to strict legal compliance. Throughout this demanding preparatory phase, I meticulously guarded my grand plans from Ava. I harbored no desire to prematurely ignite her hopes, not after the profound and crushing disappointment she had so recently experienced with the abrupt demise of her lemonade stand. Instead, I offered her reassuring platitudes, gently hinting that we were working on something truly special, a novel and exciting avenue for her to share her delectable creations with the world. Her young eyes, though still harboring a faint flicker of past hurt, now gleamed with a nascent, fragile hope, a testament to her inherent resilience. Approximately 3 weeks into this meticulous bureaucratic odyssey, a small, official-looking envelope, bearing the distinctive insignia of the Cypress Creek HOA, materialized in my mailbox. My heart instinctively skipped a beat, a momentary spasm of apprehension. A fine? Had Karen, through some unseen network of informants or uncanny intuition, somehow divined my audacious intentions? I tore open the envelope with a sense of trepidation. It contained a formal notice acknowledging my ongoing application for a city business license for a home-based food service. The notice, chillingly, bore the crisp, authoritative signature of Karen Winslow herself. It chillingly stated, with an almost palpable undertone of warning, "Please be advised that the Cypress Creek HOA reserves the right to review said business operation for compliance with all standing bylaws and covenants upon commencement of operations. Any violations will be subject to immediate penalties." It was an unmistakable warning shot, a thinly veiled threat of future reprisal, a clear and undeniable indication that she was acutely aware of my intentions, that her watchful gaze remained fixed upon me. Yet, paradoxically, it also served as an implicit confirmation of her present powerlessness to directly impede my progress, now that I was diligently pursuing a perfectly legitimate and legally sanctioned license. My strategic plan, despite her subtle attempts at intimidation, was progressing precisely as intended. On a glorious sun-drenched Saturday morning, precisely 4 meticulously counted weeks after Karen Winslow had so unceremoniously and cruelly crushed Ava's innocent dream, Lawnside Sips officially unveiled its charming facade and commenced operations. Ava, her eyes wide with a mixture of childlike wonder and a newfound, almost adult, sparkle, was quite literally beaming. I had, the previous evening, meticulously explained my grand plan to her, detailing how we were embarking on the venture of opening a real cafe, emphasizing how her signature lemonade would undoubtedly be the brand undisputed star of our culinary offerings. Her initial shock, a fleeting emotion, had swiftly transmuted into a boundless, unadulterated excitement that permeated her every movement. She assisted me with boundless energy in the setup, meticulously placing fresh, vibrant flowers on each quaint bistro table, carefully arranging the sugar dispensers and creamers with an almost surgical precision. She wore a bright, pristine new apron, custom-made specifically for her, proudly emblazoned with the distinctive Lawnside Sips logo. Our inaugural customers were, predictably, curious neighbors, drawn initially by the novelty of the enterprise and, more powerfully, by the irresistibly inviting aroma of freshly brewed coffee that now permeated the morning air. Mrs. Rodriguez, Ava's very first customer from the ill-fated lemonade stand, was among them. Her eyes, twinkling with a mixture of amusement and quiet approval, met mine. "Jacob," she whispered conspiratorially, a knowing smile playing subtly on her lips, "this is simply brilliant, a veritable stroke of genius, and infinitely more inviting than that dreary, sterile cafe at the clubhouse." Word of our charming new establishment disseminated through the close-knit community of Cypress Creek with the speed and efficiency of a rapidly spreading wildfire. The informal grapevine of suburban gossip proved to be a far more potent and effective marketing campaign than any meticulously crafted advertising strategy could ever hope to achieve. Residents, having grown weary of the predictable, often sterile atmosphere and the consistently lukewarm coffee offered at the Creek Café, found themselves irresistibly drawn to the undeniable charm and genuine warmth radiating from lawnside sips. They expressed their profound appreciation for the cozy, inviting outdoor setting, the unique personal touch evident in every interaction, the authentic warmth of the service, and, naturally, for Ava's perfectly balanced, refreshingly tart sweet lemonade, which had quickly ascended to the status of a signature, highly coveted offering. Moreover, they found deep satisfaction in the quiet yet potent rebellion that my venture inherently represented, a subtle act of defiance against the stifling uniformity they had come to resent. Before long, residents who had previously adhered to their customary stop at the Creek Café found themselves consciously rerouting their morning routines, opting instead for a leisurely, unhurried coffee experience on Exero. My front lawn, the gentle tinkling of convivial conversation, the rich, aromatic scent of brewing espresso, and the occasional, unbridled burst of Ava's joyful laughter permeated the air, creating a truly inviting atmosphere. My lawn, once a mere expanse of meticulously maintained grass, had been utterly transformed into a vibrant, bustling hub of genuine community, a living, breathing testament to the power of subtle defiance. I observed them, the residents, passing by, their faces alight with a mixture of curiosity and quiet, approving satisfaction. And then I saw her, Karen Winslow's dark SUV. It idled slowly, almost imperceptibly, at the curb directly across the street, her impeccably coiffed head strikingly visible through the subtly tinted window. Her piercing gaze was fixed, with an almost predatory intensity, on my now bustling front lawn, on the smiling, contented faces of her own neighbors, casually sipping lattes and Ava's lemonade, openly reveling in the very commercial activity she had so vehemently and vainly attempted to suppress. Her expression was a magnificent, almost theatrical tableau of barely contained fury, bewildered frustration, and profound, undeniable defeat. She was utterly powerless to intervene, completely paralyzed by the very rules she had so zealously enforced. The bylaws, her own sacred, inviolable rules, had, with an almost poetic justice, irrevocably turned against her. She had, in a fit of petty tyranny, banned a small, innocent girl's lemonade stand, and in doing so, I had audaciously opened a fully licensed cafe on my front lawn, strategically positioned directly under her vigilant nose, and was steadily, inexorably siphoning off her customers, one delicious, perfectly brewed sip at a time. The battle, I knew, had only just begun, but the initial skirmish had been definitively, unequivocally won. The pervasive hum of quiet satisfaction that now permeated our home, a direct consequence of the resounding success and burgeoning popularity of lawnside sips, felt almost palpable. As intoxicating and invigorating as the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee that now consistently wafted from our front yard each sun-drenched morning. Ava, whose spirit had once been so cruelly crushed, now radiated in almost incandescent joy, her small face aglow with an unadulterated pride as she diligently assisted me in serving our ever-growing clientele. Her signature lemonade, now proudly designated as Ava's original recipe, had achieved the status of a runaway sensation, consistently lauded by discerning residents who appreciated its authentic, perfectly balanced taste and, perhaps even more so, the compelling narrative that underscored its very existence. We were meticulously cultivating something far more profound than a mere commercial enterprise. We were actively nurturing a vibrant sense of community, fostering a gentle, yet potent, rebellion against the suffocating strictures of conformity that Karen Winslow so resolutely embodied. Karen's initial eruption of fury, which had been so vividly manifest in that brief, seething glance from the confines of her SUV, seemed to intensify with each passing day, mutating into a more insidious, pervasive resentment. My meticulously positioned lawn-side SIPSA sign, adhering with unwavering precision to the stringent 1 square foot, non-illuminated rule, stood as an undeniable, audacious declaration of independence, a symbol of defiance that she was utterly powerless to dismantle. She possessed no legitimate grounds to cite a bylaw violation because I had diligently completed my preparatory work, dotted every I, and crossed every T in both the labyrinthine city ordinances and the equally convoluted HOA regulations. It must have been an exquisitely maddening realization for her, I often mused, to find herself ensnared by the very intricate web of rules and regulations that she so zealously, indeed almost religiously, enforced upon others. The Creek Café, situated within the clubhouse, Karen's cherished project and, more significantly, a substantial revenue stream for the HOA, began to experience increasingly discernible and undeniably detrimental financial repercussions. The HOA's quarterly financial reports, which were, much to my strategic advantage, publicly accessible to all residents, starkly revealed a significant and unprecedented downturn in the cafe's revenue. The once thriving Creek Café, a perennial and reliable moneymaker for the HOA, was now, alarmingly, barely achieving a break-even point. This downturn represented a direct and palpable blow to Karen's established authority and her carefully cultivated prestige within the HOA board, particularly as the café had long been touted as her crowning contribution to the community's financial well-being. I began to hear faint whispers, initially, then more pronounced murmurs, indicating that she was facing mounting pressure from other discerning board members, who expressed escalating concern regarding the declining funds and the visibly growing discontent among residents who openly and unequivocally expressed their preference for my unpretentious yet thriving café. Karen, entirely predictably, did not succumb to defeat with grace or ease. Her tactical approach subtly shifted from overt, direct confrontation to a more insidious, almost clandestine form of bureaucratic harassment, a protracted war of attrition waged through administrative channels. The first discernible manifestation of this shift arrived in the form of a formal letter from the HOA, meticulously delivered via certified mail, citing a nebulous noise complaint. It grandly asserted that the unacceptable levels of ambient conversation and brewing equipment sounds emanating from lawn-side SIPs were ostensibly disturbing the quiet enjoyment of the neighborhood, thereby constituting a direct and egregious violation of Section D, subsection 3 of the Home-Based Businesses Addendum. The letter, penned with a veiled menace, threatened the imposition of immediate fines if the purported noise levels were not expeditiously reduced. I allowed myself a wry chuckle upon perusing the absurd accusation. Ambient conversation and brewing equipment sounds. My high-quality espresso machine emitted nothing more than a gentle, almost meditative whir, and my valued customers were merely engaging in the fundamental human act of polite conversation. It was a transparent, almost comically desperate, attempt to stifle my burgeoning business through sheer intimidation and bureaucratic nitpicking. I responded with a promptness born of strategic advantage, with unwavering courtesy, and with meticulous, undeniable detail. I enclosed a certified copy of a professional sound survey, which I had discreetly commissioned from a certified acoustic engineer, a former college friend who, conveniently, owed me a significant favor. This survey unequivocally demonstrated that the sound levels emanating from my property, even during our busiest operating hours, were well within established municipal noise ordinances and, crucially, fell demonstrably below the HOA's own, vaguely defined and objectively unstated, quiet enjoyment threshold, a point I meticulously highlighted as being devoid of quantifiable parameters within their bylaws. I further, and politely, reminded them that the Creek Café, the HOA's own establishment situated directly across the street, routinely generated significantly higher levels of ambient noise from its considerably larger outdoor seating area and frequently hosted events that produced far more disruptive sounds. My comprehensive response was meticulously polite, unyielding in its factual accuracy, and left absolutely no legitimate avenue for rebuttal. Karen's frivolous noise complaint, utterly devoid of any factual basis, consequently fizzled out, deflating like a punctured balloon. Her next volley of bureaucratic missiles targeted perceived traffic and parking concerns. Another formal letter arrived, this time alleging that lawnside SIPs was causing undue vehicular congestion and inadequate parking on the street. This accusation was equally absurd and demonstrably false. The overwhelming majority of my loyal customers were pedestrians, residents who simply walked over from their nearby streets, drawn by the unique charm of our establishment. Those who occasionally arrived by vehicle meticulously adhered to all applicable parking regulations, legally parking at the curb, precisely as they would when visiting any other neighbor. My counter-response was, once again, painstakingly detailed. I included high-resolution aerial photographs, meticulously time-stamped video footage of my operating hours unequivocally demonstrating a minimal impact on vehicular traffic, and, with a subtle flourish, pointed out that the Creek Café, with its substantially larger footprint and higher volume of customers, routinely generated far more significant vehicular traffic and often had patrons illegally parking in designated fire lanes. This particular complaint, like its predecessor, also collapsed ignominiously under the undeniable weight of empirical, factual evidence. Karen's escalating desperation became increasingly, almost painfully, evident to anyone observing her. She commenced a pattern of physically patrolling the street immediately outside my house, often ensconced within the tinted confines of her dark SUV, but occasionally even on foot, a rigid clipboard clutched ostentatiously in her hand, her eyes meticulously scanning every inch of my property for guile, any perceived infraction. She would frequently position herself directly across the street, glaring with undisguised venom at my contented customers, her expression a magnificent composite of impotent rage, bewildered frustration, and utter, profound defeat. It was, I confess, almost comical to observe a suburban supervillain rendered utterly powerless against the irresistible allure of a perfectly brewed latte and the innocent charm of a child's lemonade stand. My customers, far from being intimidated by her theatrical antics, found her very presence a source of considerable amusement, often waving cheerfully at her, a gesture that only seemed to intensify her simmering brevor, seething resentment. Some even began to incorporate Karen watching as an amusing, almost ritualistic component of their lawnside SIPs experience, placing good-natured bets on the precise duration of her vigil. Her futile surveillance, in a perverse twist of fate, inadvertently boosted my business, elevating lawnside SIPs to the status of a local legend, a quiet yet potent symbol of community-led resistance. Ava, with her characteristically acute observational skills, did not miss a single one of Karen's increasingly frantic antics. "Gaddy?" she inquired one crisp morning, her small hand shading her eyes as she watched Karen glare from the confines of her pristine driveway. "Why does Miss Winslow always look so incredibly mad when we're happy?" I knelt down, gently ruffling her soft hair. "Because, sweetie," I patiently explained, my voice imbued with a quiet wisdom, Some individuals simply do not possess the capacity to tolerate the happiness of others, particularly if that happiness originates from something they vigorously attempted to suppress. But that, my darling, is their problem, not ours. We are undeniably creating something truly positive here, fostering genuine smiles, and that, fundamentally, is what truly matters. Her small face brightened perceptibly, a spark of understanding igniting in her innocent eyes. So, we're making grumpy people even grumpier by just being happy? She giggled, a pure, unadulterated sound of childhood joy. Precisely. I winked conspiratorially. It's a very special, almost magical kind of power, wouldn't you agree? As Lawnside Sips continued its triumphant flourishing, the undeniable financial impact on the Creek Café became starkly evident. The HOA's meticulously prepared quarterly financial reports, which, as I previously noted, were legally accessible to all vigilant residents, began to exhibit a significant and alarmingly unprecedented decline in the cafe's revenue. The once thriving Creek Café, an unwavering and reliable source of consistent income for the HOA, was now, to the growing consternation of the board, barely breaking even. This financial downturn represented a direct and palpable blow to Karen's long-established authority and her carefully cultivated prestige within the HOA board, particularly as the café had always been publicly lauded as her primary and most lucrative contribution to the community's fiscal health. I began to hear increasingly overt whispers, then open discussions, indicating that she was facing mounting internal pressure from other discerning board members, who expressed escalating concern regarding the dwindling operational funds and the visibly growing discontent among residents who now openly and unequivocally expressed their preference for my charming and significantly more affordable outdoor cafe. The culmination of Karen's escalating frustration and the final decisive blow to her dwindling authority manifested during the highly anticipated annual HOA general meeting. I attended this particular meeting, accompanied by a surprisingly large contingent of Lawnside Sips regulars who had, I strongly suspected, come more out of a sense of unified solidarity and quiet amusement than any genuine keen interest in the intricacies of HOA bylaws. Karen, typically composed and exuding an aura of absolute authority during these formal gatherings, was visibly agitated. Her voice was noticeably sharper, edged with a palpable frustration, her gestures more frantic as she made a desperate, transparent attempt to gloss over the Creek Café's undeniable financial downturn, downplaying its severity with strained optimism. During the customary Q session, Mr. Henderson, a retired lawyer of impeccable reputation and a devoted regular at Lawnside Sips, calmly raised his hand, his demeanor radiating an air of quiet, unshakable confidence. "Karen," he stated, his voice resonating through the room with a surprising depth and clarity, "the financial reports, which are, as you know, publicly accessible, clearly indicate a significant and unprecedented decline in revenue for the Creek Café. Do you by any chance possess a plausible explanation for this remarkable downturn?" "Perhaps," he added, a subtle, almost imperceptible twinkle illuminating his sharp eyes. "It is directly related to the flourishing, perfectly legal, and, I must add, rather delightful Lawnside Sips operation currently thriving just across the street from Mr. Smith's property." A collective murmur of knowing agreement rippled audibly through the assembled residents. Karen's impeccably made-up face flushed a deep, telltale crimson. She stammered, her usual formidable composure entirely abandoning her, dissolving under the unexpected public scrutiny. "Mr. Henderson," she fumbled, her voice strained, "that is entirely speculative. The Creek Café faces economic challenges, like any other business, and Mr. Smith's temporary establishment is certainly not helping community cohesion," she concluded with a sharp, venomous glare directed squarely at me, her eyes blazing with an impotent fury that could have, metaphorically speaking, melted steel. I, in stark contrast, remained utterly calm, simply offering her a polite, unreadable smile, a subtle, unspoken acknowledgment of her futile rage. The battle, I knew, had been definitively won. Karen, in her desperate attempt to deflect, had been forced to admit, however indirectly and grudgingly, that my humble café was indeed profoundly impacting her cherished profits. She was compelled to witness her own neighbors, the very individuals she had relentlessly sought to control and regulate, now flocking cheerfully to my front lawn, leisurely sipping lattes and Ava's signature lemonade, openly reveling in the very commercial activity she had so vehemently and vainly attempted to suppress. She had, in a fit of petty tyranny, banned a small, innocent girl's lemonade stand, citing obscure and selectively enforced bylaws, and in doing so, she had inadvertently, yet irrevocably, ignited a quiet, powerful revolution that stripped her of her perceived authority, exposed her inherent pettiness to the entire community, and solidified my position as a small but significant force of defiance in the otherwise meticulously controlled landscape of Cypress Creek. The unparalleled sweetness of Ava's homemade lemonade, now subtly infused with a potent dash of strategic, satisfying revenge, tasted infinitely better than any corporate victory I had ever achieved in the high-stakes world of software engineering. The weeks that followed the contentious HOA meeting witnessed a subtle, yet undeniably profound, alteration in the very fabric of Cypress Creek. Karen Winslow, her public authority significantly diminished, and her personal pride wounded by the undeniable financial decline of her once cherished Creek Café, retreated noticeably from her usual ubiquitous enforcement presence. Her sleek, dark SUV, once a constant, ominous fixture patrolling the meticulously maintained streets, was now observed with significantly less frequency, its once intimidating presence largely absent from the neighborhood's daily rhythm. Similarly, her meticulously crafted, formal warning letters, once delivered with an almost punitive regularity, became increasingly rare, fading into infrequent, almost token communications. It became undeniably clear that the HOA board, now acutely attuned to the mounting resident sentiment and increasingly concerned about the tangible decline in the association's general funds, had effectively reined her in. She still resided, of course, 2 streets over, a perpetual, seething presence, a silent, impotent fury contained within her perfectly manicured lawn, but her power, once absolute, had been unequivocally and significantly curtailed. Lawnside Sips, conversely, thrived. It transcended its humble origins as a mere café. It organically evolved into a vibrant symbol of burgeoning community spirit, an informal, yet indispensable, meeting point for neighbors who had, over time, grown weary of the HOA's stifling gray regulations and arbitrary dictates. We subtly expanded our culinary offerings, meticulously adding a selection of freshly baked muffins and buttery croissants, lovingly sourced from a reputable local bakery, their aroma mingling delightfully with the scent of coffee. We even introduced a rotating selection of exotic herbal teas, catering to a wider array of tastes. Ava, now fully and enthusiastically embracing her elevated role as co-owner and the esteemed chief lemonade expert, meticulously managed her brightly colored money box, her calculations, I noted with a surge of paternal pride, far more accurate and discerning than my own sometimes. She even proposed, with an endearing precociousness, AI flavor of the week concept for her lemonade. Embarking on delightful experiments with refreshing mint infusions and sweet strawberry variations, each new concoction proving to be more popular than the last. Her nascent confidence, initially shattered by Karen's cruel intervention, blossomed beautifully, transforming the shy, heartbroken child into a vivacious, self-assured young entrepreneur, her spirit irrepressible. Our burgeoning customer base, solidified into a loyal, unwavering following. The allure of lawnside sips extended far beyond the simple appeal of exceptional coffee or the perfectly balanced sweetness of Ava's lemonade. It encompassed the entirety of the experience. The comfortable, inviting bistro tables, the enchanting twinkle of the LED fairy lights that softly illuminated the evening hours, the effortless flow of genuine conversation, and the deeply satisfying knowledge that they were actively supporting a small, local, and defiantly independent business all contributed to its undeniable charm. Neighbors, previously confined to their separate enclaves, began spontaneously gathering on my lawn for impromptu book clubs, casual catch-ups over steaming mugs, and even small, informal neighborhood meetings that had, in the past, been rigidly confined to the sterile, impersonal environment of the clubhouse. Lawnside Sips, with its vibrant energy and welcoming atmosphere, organically blossomed into the unofficial, yet undeniable, heart of Cypress Creek, a living testament to the profound power of genuine community, triumphing over oppressive bureaucracy. I occasionally caught glimpses of Karen. She would be meticulously pruning her meticulously manicured rose bushes, her back rigidly straight, her posture radiating an almost palpable air of aggrieved indignation. Her fleeting glances towards my bustling, thriving lawn were invariably imbued with a complex mixture of resentment and an almost pitiable helplessness. She steadfastly refused to acknowledge my presence directly, never offering even a perfunctory greeting, but the discernible tension in her shoulders, the almost imperceptible tremor in her hands as she snipped a delicate rose, betrayed the profound internal turmoil that continued to rage within her. The profound silence that had once defined the space between our houses, a silence broken only by her sharp, authoritative admonishments, was now consistently filled with the gentle, reassuring hum of my espresso machine and the cheerful, uninhibited chatter of my contented customers. An omnipresent, auditory reminder of her undeniable, crushing defeat. One particularly brilliant afternoon, as Ava was diligently wiping down the bistro tables, her movements precise and practiced, a woman I hadn't encountered before approached our stand. She was elegantly dressed, possessing a friendly, open countenance, and carried a professional-looking clipboard. She introduced herself as Mrs. Evelyn Reed, a newly elected member of the HOA board. "Mr. Smith," she began, her voice warm, genuinely friendly, radiating an unmistakable sincerity, "I wanted to personally extend my deepest gratitude for what you've accomplished for this community. Lawnside Sips has genuinely brought such a wonderful, vibrant energy back to Cypress Creek. It's precisely what we desperately needed." I was genuinely surprised, pleasantly so, by her unsolicited commendation. "Thank you, Mrs. Reed. We've certainly enjoyed the privilege of serving the neighborhood." She offered a knowing smile, a subtle, almost conspiratorial glint in her eyes. "I understand you experienced some initial challenges. Karen Winslow can be quite meticulously by the book." I offered a diplomatic shrug, a subtle gesture of acknowledgement, without explicitly endorsing or condemning. We simply wanted to ensure that Ava could pursue her innocent desire to sell lemonade without inadvertently transgressing any established rules. Mrs. Reed nodded, her expression transitioning to a more serious, contemplative mien. "Well, your unwavering persistence, Mr. Smith, and your meticulous adherence to the HOA bylaws has had a profound and undeniable impact. The Creek Café's significant and sustained revenue loss has, I must confess, initiated some unnecessary and overdue conversations within the HOA board. There's a palpable, growing sentiment among the members that the HOA, as an institution, has become excessively rigid, disproportionately focused on trivial enforcement, and regrettably deficient in its efforts to foster a genuine docile spirit of community engagement." She paused, then leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a more confidential tone. "Karen Winslow's current position on the Architectural and Covenant Control Committee is, I can confirm, presently under comprehensive review. Her heavy-handed, often arbitrary tactics, particularly her unfortunate handling of your daughter's innocent lemonade stand, have undeniably alienated a significant and vocal portion of the residents. And the persistent financial drain from the Creek Café, well, that is a quantifiable factor that becomes increasingly difficult to ignore, especially when it directly impacts every resident's annual HOA fees. A quiet, yet deeply satisfying sense of vindication settled over me. This revelation transcended the confines of my personal victory. It signaled a broader, more significant shift within the community, a palpable pushback against arbitrary, unnecessary authoritarianism. The initial lemonade stand, and subsequently the flourishing lawnside sips, had undeniably served as the critical catalyst for this positive transformation. We are actually actively exploring the possibility of revising some of the existing bylaws, Mrs. Reed continued, her voice filled with a hopeful energy, particularly those related to fostering legitimate community events and encouraging small-scale resident-led initiatives. Our overarching objective is to genuinely encourage, rather than stifle, authentic community engagement. Perhaps you would be interested, Mr. Smith, in offering your valuable insights and perspective. You clearly possess a deep and nuanced understanding of the bylaws and a truly unique perspective on what residents genuinely desire and deserve. I was genuinely touched, deeply so. This unfolding narrative was no longer merely about personal revenge. It had organically transformed into a powerful narrative of positive, meaningful change. I would be absolutely delighted to, Mrs. Reed, I replied, a genuine, unburdened smile spreading across my face, reflecting the sincerity of my commitment. Anything to contribute towards fostering a more welcoming, inclusive, and truly communal environment within Cypress Creek. That evening, as I diligently helped Ava perform the final closing rituals for lawnside sips, the last lingering rays of the setting sun casting a warm, golden glow over our now bustling, vibrant front lawn, I felt a profound, almost spiritual sense of peace. The comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee still permeated the crisp evening air, delightfully commingling with the sweet, unmistakable scent of citrus emanating from Ava's lemonade. The bistro tables, which had, just months prior, stood empty and unused, had since hosted countless animated conversations, witnessed innumerable moments of shared laughter, and served as the silent backdrop for countless acts of genuine connection. "Daddy," Ava said, looking up at me, her young eyes shining with a profound understanding. "Remember when Miss Winslow said I couldn't sell lemonade?" "Ah, I do, sweetie," I replied, a wry, knowing smile touching my lips. "Well," she announced, puffing out her chest slightly, a gesture of childish triumph, "now I have a whole cafe, and everyone loves my lemonade. And Miss Winslow looks really, really sad when she walks by. I think our happy coffee makes her sad." I chuckled softly, pulling her into a tight, reassuring hug. "It seems you're absolutely right, Ava. Your happy coffee and your delicious lemonade possess a truly special kind of power. A power, I believe, far greater and more enduring than any rigid rulebook could ever hope to wield." And as I gazed across the street at Karen Winslow's perfectly manicured, yet profoundly silent, lawn, and then allowed my eyes to drift back to our own, vibrant, bustling space, alive with the lingering echoes of laughter and conversation, I knew, with an absolute, unwavering certainty, that Karen's sadness, however profound, was an infinitesimally small price to pay for the immense joy, the palpable sense of community, and the quiet yet powerful revolution that had organically bloomed on our humble front lawn. The HOA Karen had, in a moment of petty tyranny, banned my kid's innocent lemonade stand, and in doing so, I had audaciously and legally opened a thriving cafe on my own front lawn, systematically siphoned off her customers, and, quite inadvertently, yet permanently, altered the very fabric and spirit of Cypress Creek. proving unequivocally that even in the most meticulously regulated environments, a small measure of defiant courage, a considerable amount of ingenious assault, resourcefulness, and the pure, unyielding spirit of a child could indeed create profound and lasting waves of change. The sweetest victory, after all, was always the one that tasted like genuine freedom and the refreshing, tart sweetness of freshly squeezed lemonade.